Hello, everyone, and welcome yet again to another episode of Pokes on Relationships. All right, so listen to this 0.72 births per woman, South Korea. Italy, 1.2 births. Japan, 1.6, and US is fast behind them, hot on their heels with 1.6 births per woman. And this is happening in very high secular societies. And my question is, why is it that secular societies that just get rid of culture, religion, end up declining with regards to population? More specifically, those that are boasting of technological advancements and right now are supposedly even leading the race in terms of robotics. Is there a correlation between technology and the decline of the most valuable relationships in our life, which I think is the institution of marriage? I beg to argue that yes, in fact, there is a direct correlation, and I wanted to really speak about this. So, for example, we blame housing, we blame student debt, we blame career demands, but those who exist in religious countries too, their birth rates are holding up better. I mean, they also have certain costs of rising or certain high costs because what's happening globally is affecting everybody in the economy. But somehow cultures that are very strong in terms of just their religious practices are faring better. And so I really had to ask myself, how come it seems that there is a direct correlation between nations that have strong religious beliefs and birth rates? So what's really going on? Secular societies, the freest, richest, most educated in history, struggle to sustain the most basic human structure, which is family. And I thought that that was pretty interesting. But here's the thing that people don't want to believe about just religion and strong cultural values that are tied to religion. Mind you, people boast of secularism, but I don't necessarily think that secularism is an objective or a neutral position either. I also think that it's very subjective in its approach. And I can see that if something was just neutral and objective, then ultimately the outcome of it shouldn't be so devastating. The outcome of it shouldn't devastate societies to such an extent that literally villages, I've said, in European countries are emptying out, and even so in Asia. And right now, one of the nations that have the biggest populations, China, who has been said to be leading the technological, or what I call the fourth industrial revolution, is also starting to see a rapid decline in population. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Here's the thing about what religion and culture does. It gives us a shared responsibility beyond ourselves, beyond the nuclear family, because it thrives in community. You go to church, you have the community. There's this African proverb that goes as, it takes a village to raise a child. And when you start having societies that are very secular and very individualistic and nuclear in its approach, ultimately you start to lose the family structure. And how does population and how does the bedrocks, really the thing that holds humanity together, continue to survive in such an environment? Communities as well, like for example, churches, also encourage forgiveness, encourage relationships, because people aren't perfect. You're going to have to learn to tolerate people, whether they talk too much or have different views. And these cultural and these churches and societies are spaces where people get to practice that on a regular basis. But right now, what we are seeing with convenient technology is that people are pulling away from these communal spaces more and more and more, and becoming more focused individually. And again, the more I do research on this, I'm starting to see that, is this actually by design? And if it is, what do we do? I think that there's definitely a way around it. But before I get to what I think we can do and what we can start fighting for as human beings, I'd like for us to really think about what is the impact and what is the trade-off of this kind of society and modern society. Now, a lot of people would say, well, I don't care what happens to society, because they didn't want me in the first place. In my other video, I spoke about how 7 million men literally have just vanished. And not because they wanted to, but society has squeezed them so much that they feel that they have to fight and face the world alone. So granted, these group of people might not necessarily care too much what society thinks of them, because ultimately they've given it a shot at society and society hasn't, or humanity hasn't welcomed them in. But we can't afford to just ignore this problem and think that it's just going to blow away. Why? Because of the two most impactful things that I think are going to definitely take over in a very radical way that I think as human beings we're not ready for. The first has already started, and we know that with AI, it has literally disrupted almost every single industry. It has infiltrated areas of the most intimate spaces of human relationship. We are hearing of AI husbands, AI spouses. And the other one that I think people haven't really given thought to yet, and maybe because it's just too much, right? I think we're still trying to recover from the wave of AI. But the second is robotics. We know that this has been for a while in Japan. You know, they've been the head cut right at the forefront of cutting edge technology when it comes to robotics. We know this is this case in Japan, and we know that USA is hot on its heels in terms of wanting to be a part of that race, with Tesla releasing and wanting to release its humanoid 3 robot. But what does that actually mean for society? And I would like to say that American society is particularly different, because the survey shows and data shows that actually only 30% of the people within the society are ready for such a world. And so what are we going to do when we have robots that we don't want amongst ourselves? Or I wouldn't say we don't want, because perhaps some robot can be used for good things, the same way AI has been very helpful and instrumental in some areas. But what happens to human relationships when robots become, I think, the fifth wave of technological disruption that, again, I think as human beings are not ready for? What happens to humanity? Because those robots are not just coming to replace human tasks, they're also coming to replace human relationships, human tasks, even in the context of relationship. So I was thinking about this, and I was just wondering, that is secularism really that amazing? Because the trade-offs that seem to happen is like, okay, individual freedom, but then the result of that is delayed marriage, fewer kids, and then higher breakup rates, and then a very lonely, not alone, lonely generation and society. And we've seen that with the introduction of social media, this has also increased anxiety levels and suicide levels. Also, that this concept of just do what makes you happy, and then when happiness just fades away, then you easily walk away, you ghost somebody. I think the conflation of not wanting to resolve issue and calling it protecting your peace, when really what it is just ghosting people. We're just creating a society where we're just like touch screens, like everything just triggers us. We're just upset, and there's no substance, there's no staying power in relationships. And as human beings, we are not wired and created for that. We're created and biologically wired to grow and to build in adversity. So if you remove that and you just replace it with this overabundance of convenience and ease, I think for me that rings big alarm bells. Not just because it just makes life easier, but I just think it makes people really shallow and easy to control, because then at any sight or any feeling of pushback or discomfort, we cave in. And I don't think that's necessarily a great thing. We grow, we become amazing by the questions we ask, we become more amazing by the adversities that we overcome. Nobody is called a hero by just living a soft life. We celebrate heroes because they overcame tough things. So yeah, I wonder, secularism, is that a good thing or not? I think things that you can do is really start to think about what I'm saying. Strong relationships as a form of resistance, especially because of the announcement of the humanoid robot that is definitely coming out. I mean, we've heard Elon Musk himself say that AI and robots will take care of your parents. And I've been singing this over and over again. I'm not against robots. In fact, I'm very pro good robotics and I'm pro good AI. But I ask myself this question: if people were given the opportunity to live in a society that was conducive for them to nurture the most important relationships around them versus robots replacing that very integral role in a relationship context, which one would they choose? And I know what you're going to say. Well, human beings can be cruel and this, that. Yeah, that's true. Yes, there are some humans that are toxic, but I think I'm pretty sure that a lot of people would answer, I'd want more time with my kids. I want more time with doing stuff that I love with the people that I care about versus I want to work more so that I can afford a robot to take care of my kids or to do the things that I think I should be doing. I could be wrong. I digress, but I'm interested to find out what you have to say. What do you think? Are we losing ourselves as we become more modernized, as we become more secular, and just have less space and places for cultural community activities, and as religion begins to dissipate away in our society? And I mean good religion, right? I'm not talking about the religion that has created wars, the religion that has created and sparked so much hatred. Obviously, I always feel like I have to caveat a lot of what I say, because these days, if you don't, people will just assume certain things. But I want to be very clear that I'm talking about the beautiful aspects of culture, the communal aspects of culture and of religion. I'm finding that a lot of communities that still have this very strongly within their society just seem happier and seem to be growing more and more, while those that are boasting of being at the front edge of cutting edge technology and modernism are not so happy. Anyway, I speak much, but let me know your thoughts. Do you think that secularism is coming at a very big trade off with family? And yeah, what does that mean?